If you're planning on getting Yae Miko or have her and do not know how to build her, then this video is for you. My name is Anchovies and today's video is going to be an artifact guide that is dedicated to Yae Miko. Stick around until the end where I'll be giving tips on artifact farming and a Genshin optimizer demonstration. Really quickly before getting into her artifacts, let's briefly mention her playstyle. Generally, you usually spam Yae Miko's elemental skill. You can cast her skill up to 3 times, and then afterwards you want to swap out and do some of your team setup, and then you can swap back, and when you have her elemental burst ready in teams where she wants to use her elemental burst, you cast her burst, and then you can cast her E3 times again. Now typically Yae Miko wants to burst every other rotation, and there's multiple reasons for this. Firstly is the fact that her burst costs 90 energy, which is a really high cost, and she's one of few units that has this high of an energy cost. Because of this, it makes it quite difficult in many team archetypes to actually be able to burst every rotation, even if you have a lot of energy built into her. Additionally, her skill triggers about 6 to 8 particles per rotation, and this is based on whether or not her turrets actually hit opponents. Therefore, this easily makes her need upwards of around 200 or more energy recharge in solo electro teams, and even in double electros, she'll still need around 160 to 100 energy recharge. Now, if you are running her in a team like say a Raiden team, then this can lower to around 130 to 150, which then makes it become slightly more comfortable, but you still need to build some energy if you want to burst every rotation for her. Now when it comes to her damage output, in single target, her elemental skill will do more damage because when using her burst, it's only of course to a single target, so her skill will generally do a bit more damage than her elemental burst. However, when we get into AoE scenarios when there are multiple targets like 3, 4, 5 enemies and even more, then her elemental burst starts to have more relevancy because of its AoE coverage and its damage, and therefore her burst damage begins to become more important and overall does more damage in those scenarios. So now that we have those covered, let's now get into the artifacts, and starting with the artifact sets. So let's first talk about artifact sets in the context of non-Dendro teams. Her top artifact sets are 4-piece Golden Troop or 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. Emblem of Severed Fate is good in multi-target scenarios and when you want to burst every rotation, and its value especially increases in solo electro teams where she has higher energy requirements, and of course it can also be gained from Strongbox, which is another plus. For Golden Troop, it definitely works best in single target scenarios, and if she does not prioritize bursting every rotation in the team that she is in. This artifact is also resin efficient as it shares a domain with Marachasi Hunter, and of course if you don't get good pieces from there, then you can just fodder them for better emblem pieces. And even when it's not the best choice, it's still a solid default pick. Next up is 2-piece variations with anything considering attack percent, Thundering Fury, or Emblem of Severed Fate, whichever you need more in depending on the scenario. This is then followed by 4-piece Thunder Soother. Now this of course assumes that you have 100% uptime on its 4-piece passive effect. Now this is primarily working best in taser teams where you're triggering the electro charge reaction frequently because of course you can maintain electro on enemies easier through that reaction. However, outside of taser teams or in situations where you are against elementally infused enemies, then you can have some struggle with maintaining uptime, and thus the set will start to lose value. And although you can strongbox for the set, in my personal opinion, it's really not worth strongboxing, especially when you consider the fact that Emblem of Severed Fate, which is way more usable on many more characters in this game, it just loses value even when you think about strongboxing for it. And the last set is 4-piece Tenacity of the Millilith. Now this can be okay in teams where Yae Miko's damage contribution matters very little, and when I say very little, I mean like very little. It has to literally not matter to even consider using this set on Yae Miko. Now the set of course provides a 20% team-wide attack buff, which is really beneficial in teams that can take advantage of this buff, and Yae Miko's turrets attack frequently enough to where it can have 100% uptime on the passive effect. However, do note that it is really not worth farming or strongboxing exclusively for Yae Miko. In terms of artifact stats, for main stats, you're going to want to run an energy recharge sands or an attack percent sands, an electro damage goblet, and a crit circlet. For subsets, you want to prioritize crit, then attack percent, then energy recharge, then elemental mastery, and then flat attack. So let's now talk about artifact sets, but in the context of Dendro teams. So for example, in things like Yae Aggravate teams. Her top set for this team is going to be Gilded Dreams, immediately followed by Emblem of Severed Fate and Golden Troop. Gilded Dreams provides elemental mastery in its 2-piece and provides both elemental mastery and attack percent in its 4-piece passive effect, which synergizes very well with Yae Miko's kit in general and gives her a lot of elemental mastery and attack that she loves to have in her kit. Of course, it is not necessary to farm Gilded Dreams though to perform well in these teams. You can still run Emblem or Golden Troop as they perform near equivalently, especially more for Emblem of Severed Fate and more noticeably in multi-target scenarios. Following up is 2-piece Thundering Fury, and then any variation of either Elemental Mastery, Attack Percent, Golden Troop, or Noblesse Oblige. Following suit is 4-piece Thunder Soother, and because this is Yae Aggravate, you'll definitely have a lot of Electro uptime outside of scenarios where of course there's elementally infused enemies, or in situations similar to that. So outside of those cases, you'll often have near 100% if not 100% uptime. So this is also another usable set for Yae Miko still. And then lastly is again of course 4-piece Tenacity of the Millelith. Now even though there's less flexibility on when you can really use this set in Dendro teams because most Dendro teams prioritize Elemental Mastery, there are a few cases here and there where you can use it, like for example if you're running maybe a Tenari team and you want some attack, or even like for Sino. Although they still want Elemental Mastery, it wouldn't hurt to give a little bit of an attack buff. If there's nobody else giving any sort of attack, they can still gain benefit from it. Just definitely won't be like the best case scenario. It's just that it's more so just a viable choice rather than the best choice. For artifact stats, for main stats, now this changes a little bit, but mainly in the sands department. So still energy recharge sands becomes somewhat of a priority, especially in situations where it's multi-target, then followed by Elemental Mastery or an attack percent sands. And honestly, this just depends, and this is more relevant if you're using Gilded Dreams. If you're getting a lot of the Elemental Mastery portion of the Gilded Dreams for passive effect, then that's a case where you can run attack percent sands, but otherwise you can run Elemental Mastery sands if maybe you don't have enough. Honestly, it just becomes subset dependent in what stats that you are given. The next up is still Electro Damage Goblet and then Crit Circlet. For subsets, you want to prioritize Crit, then Elemental Mastery, and then Attack Percent, then Energy Recharge, and then lastly Flat Attack. So now let's get into some farming tips in regards to farming for artifacts for Yae Miko. So generally you will have two choices. Either you farm the Golden Troop in Marchesi Hunter domain, or you farm the Gilded in Deepwood domain. And then depending on which of the two that you farm for, you can then fodder them into the strongbox for Emblem of Severed Fate or Thunder Soother if you really want to. Now generally, you would opt to farm Golden Troop or the Marchesi Hunter domain if you have already farmed enough Gilded or Deepwood for other units like Nahida or like Alhaitham or other characters that wanted to use sets within that domain. Additionally, Golden Troop and Marchesi Hunter artifact sets are definitely a lot more universal in terms of how many characters can use those sets, compared to the Gilded in Deepwood, as for Gilded in Deepwood, these two are a lot more focused on Dendro-oriented teams and characters, and even then there are some of these characters that can even use other sets, so there's also that to consider. Typically, you would only prioritize farming the Gilded in Deepwood domain if you still need a decent set or a couple sets for units that prefer either of the sets mentioned. So for example, let's say you got like Nahida recently in 4.5, and maybe you don't have a good Deepwood set for her, or you didn't pre-farm for her in the artifact department, then that could be a case where it's fine to temporarily go into the Gilded in Deepwood domain and just perma-farm that, and then fodder that, before then going to the Golden Troop and Marchesi Hunter domain. However, in the vast majority of scenarios, and just in my personal opinion, I would just do the Golden Troop and Marchesi Hunter domain, and then fodder that for Emblem. But of course, everybody's different, so depending on your scenario, you can do either of the two. So now let's think of a hypothetical scenario where let's say you have two sets that are very similar in terms of stats. So how do you know which one is better? Well, especially if it's comparing something like maybe Gilded in Yae Aggravate to like Emblem of Severed Fate or Golden Troop, then this is especially where using a calculator, so like Genshin Optimizer or some other Genshin calculator, will definitely be your best bet to give you a accurate answer in terms of which one is better. And actually, I'll go ahead and show a demonstration of using this calculator here. Alright, and that is going to conclude this artifact guide video for Yae Miko. If you did enjoy it, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more Genshin Impact content. Go ahead and check out my in-depth guide on Gamin to learn more about how to play and build him, or you can take a peek at this Xianyang constellation and weapon video I made to plan for future investment for her. And until the next video, bye bye.